delayed but not denied due to life and life circumstances. But I have been getting a lot of invites or inboxes, more or less, questions, and just a lot of requests, more or less, around when are we bringing Miss Ashlea Taylor back. And I know
Okay.
we had a very robust conversation the last time we were here. So we've been really looking forward to this dialogue tonight. And without further ado, I mean, I'm not going to belabor any time. I want us to be able to maximize every single moment of this hour. And I promise you, what we're going to be talking about tonight is we're going to dig deeper into abuse, generational trauma. We're talking about generational trauma as we started this conversation a few weeks ago. And then tonight we're going to do a real deep dive. I said no holds barred. If you saw any of our promotion, I was not joking. We're going to deal with some real tough issues tonight. And there are a lot of adults, a lot of parents. I like to consider myself the sandwich generation. You know what I'm talking about. If you have aging parents, and then you also have maybe millennial and or even teenagers, millennial, Gen Y, Gen Z, children, adult children, or young adult children. So you understand what I mean by the sandwich generation. So it's a lot of pressure, if you will, on our generation. And a lot of my listeners out there, you share this sentiment, so certainly you understand. But I want to kind of address some of the issues that happen in families, the generational trauma that happens in families. You may have heard in the past. I believe that children are born as a blank sheet of paper. We all come here as a blank sheet of paper. And good or indifferent, I'll say it again, good or indifferent, we become what other people write on it. And sometimes, it leaves a lot of scars and wounds that sometimes take a very long time to heal. So, with that, of course, you all know I like to talk, and I certainly like to address those things that challenge even me. And as you know, on this journey with me with Well of Woman, I've been learning a lot, even more about myself. And as I learn, because I am a true teacher, as I learn, I like to share it, and share it a lot. That's anything that's going to help grow and groom people existentially. I'm all about it. So I'm not going to just take the information and keep it all to myself. So with that being said, I want to bring back to the platform. You all have been asking about her. You all have been waiting to hear from her, and she is back tonight. None other than Ashlea Taylor. She's going to tell you a little bit about her. She is a licensed, not pretend. I kind of consider myself in some areas, I'm self-proclaimed. In other areas, I do have the expertise. But tonight, this is not my wheelhouse. This is only a place where I've been learning and developing. So I am bringing to the platform a licensed therapist. You all have already had a taste. And so those of you, if you're joining for the first time, you have to go back and watch that very first episode. And then you'll be able to jump right in tonight. Or jump in tonight, then go back and watch part one if you missed it. So without further ado, let me bring her on over. She's sitting with sitting on tiptoe anticipation, waiting to come in, and I'm going to bring her to the stage. None other than that of Ashlea Taylor, our licensed marriage and family therapist tonight. Welcome, Ashlea.
Hey, thank you for having me back. Oh, blessings. Thank you so much for having me back to the Well of Women show audience. Thank you guys for tuning in last time, and we're happy you're back. And if this is your first time, tune in with us, join in, ask your questions, do what you do, and then go back and watch the first one because we're going to be talking about that and some new stuff. But just thank you so much. Ashlea Taylor, owner and creator of Favor and Grace Under Fire therapy and consulting company. There are 7 therapists now. We started with just me last year, and now we've grown to 7. So check us out. But yeah, I'm so happy to be here. Let's get into it.
Let's get into it. So listen, one of the things that certainly has risen to the top that I've seen, I've had my own personal experiences, and even people that I know that are parents and parents of adult children. And I don't want to say they're children because they're adults, but they'll always be our children, right? Because we're
Yeah,
their parents.
that's the term,
Um,
adult
right.
children.
So
Yeah,
it's okay to acknowledge that as parents, right? We
yeah,
can say we're their parents, even though they're young adults adults or adults, they have come into their own, you know, across the threshold of in their 30s and
Yeah.
making it do what it do, right? However, one of the things I wanted to talk about tonight that we didn't get a chance to talk about last week or last time we came together last month was the divides, the generational divides. You know, who's right, who's wrong. Those that have that spirit of, y'all know I'm going to say it, entitlement. There's a very strong spirit of entitlement that's lingering out there, and it's not anything I can say. It's something I've witnessed myself, but also I've heard a lot of people talking about it. A lot of folks that sit in my space that are parents. So I just want to kind of hear your insight on it, and then what I want to do is do a recap of intergenerational trauma, which we talked a little bit about last time for those folks that are joining us for the first time, and then I want to just dive straight on in with these generational divides and you know what's really happening in our families.
Yeah, okay. So let's get to it. So, interracial trauma. So, basically, let me break down what trauma is first. So, the way that I explain it to my clients, because it makes sense to me, is basically if you walk into a room and you see a couch, there's a drawer that opens up in your brain that does all of the information. Can I sit on this? Is it soft? Is it hard? Is it clean? Your brain does all of that without you having to think about it. The drawer closes and you either sit down or you don't sit down. Well, there's a drawer for everything that you do and say, all the environments that you go in. However, when trauma happens, this process of the drawer opening and closing and then you making a decision is disturbed. And why it's disturbed is because your nervous system, you have two parts of your nervous system, the parasympathetic and the sympathetic. The parasympathetic is your sleep and rest, your calm, you know, when you don't feel the tension in your neck or the back, or your cheeks aren't hot or your stomach's not grumbling, whatever. That's your parasympathetic. Your sympathetic is your fight, flight, or freeze. This is your survival mode. This is what you go into when your body senses some type of attack or threat. So when your body goes into fight, flight, or freeze, all the blood goes to all the extremities that are needed for you to get away. So therefore, there's not as much blood pumping in your brain because you're emotionally flooded. And therefore, the drawers do not open and close like they should, nor do they identify what's happening to you because your brain wasn't able to fully process what's happening. So what we do trauma therapy to basically help you create a drawer in your brain to process through that traumatic event, to get you out of fight, flight, or freeze, because we don't want to be in fight, flight, or freeze 24/7 because we create more cortisone, which is the stress hormone, which,
Is that cortisol? That's the
yes,
cortisol for the belly fat, right? I don't want any of that.
yes, ma'am.
I'm
It's
just
all
understand.
that.
Okay,
Listen,
keep
it's
going.
all of all
Keep
that
going.
stuff that is hard to get away. It's all of that, the cortisol. Yes. So we don't want that though, because it also causes disease. There's just many things that it causes. So basically, we don't want to be in that. What happens though is when we're in fight, flight, or freeze too long, or when we go through complex trauma and we're not able to process it and put it away safely in a drawer, some of the ways that we live our lives are off of triggers or in the survival mode. And these things are things that we pass on generationally, right? So we could pass the trauma genesis, which is, trauma and the way that cells are created and the chromosomes and all that stuff. We can actually pass the trauma through cells, like cellularly, or we can pass the trauma in the way of how we interact in different environments, right? So, for example, for us Black people, we know there's certain places that we can't go. How do we figure that out? Our parents probably schooled us, told us if someone's following you in the store, do this. If you get pulled over by a policeman, do this. Don't go to these certain places. Don't do these certain things. Those are survival techniques due to the trauma that has been passed down, as well as other things.
Right, of course.
Yeah.
Now, you
So,
mentioned the last time in our last episode, you talked about, because I said that one of the things that I've discovered and learned was the trauma that's left in the body. And
yes,
you gave a name for it.
the
Like
body keeps the score.
the body keeps the score. Y'all hear that? The body keeps the score.
Yeah.
And so, how do we, if the body's keeping the score, and then there's trauma that's still remnants of trauma that's left in our bodies from childhood,
Mhm.
That last session just blew me away. You all, we're not going to revisit it all, but you're going to have to go back and listen when you talked about how, you know, we experience some of the things that we're experiencing now as adults is primarily due to what it was, what the experience was for our mothers when they were carrying us, and their
Mm.
experience prior to our even the inception or conception of us
Yes.
individually or collectively,
Yes.
if there were
So,
multiple births, right?
oh yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely right.
So
Up
if the
to
body's keeping the score, then what do we do as adults now that we're here? We've been on this planet 25, 30 years, 40, 50, 60, 70 years. Now what do we do with that?
Yeah, I mean, once again, our bodies and our brains are meant for us to survive. So we become very adaptive. So sometimes, and I like to call it when we get to the wiser ages, these things that are very traumatic and they're triggers, we've just adapted to living with them, but
Yes.
not realizing that they're causing our bodies some stress. Okay.
Yes.
And sometimes after our body screams, like if we have a stroke or a heart attack or high blood pressure, whatever the ailment may be, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, we aren't always able to make the correlation that it was created or due to stress, right? Because the medical field doesn't often talk about this part of it. They're just like, let's do surgery, let's do some meds,
Right.
stop
Let's
eating
give you
that,
some
stop
more
eating
medicine.
this.
Right. Yes.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so oftentimes when we get to those wiser ages, we don't make the correlation. But what we're starting to see now with different types of therapy techniques, we're starting to see people actually have less mental illness. Well, if they identified their mental illness in the first place, they're noticing that it decreases. Um, but for sure, for physical symptoms, when you're able to release the stress or process the traumatic event, your disease cells decrease.
Okay.
So, oh, go ahead.
Okay. So go. No. Go into it.
Oh,
Tell us
so
more about that.
okay. So to tell you guys how this works, there's something called psychosomatic symptoms. Often this comes in headaches, migraines,
Yeah.
stomach aches, back aches.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of another one, but I can't. But anyways,
Well, stomach
anxiety.
aches. Let's revisit that.
Okay.
Migraines. We know
Yeah.
some people get migraines all the time. Migraines, stomach aches, back aches. I think I carry my stress up here in the shoulders,
So do I.
that's one pressure point. Um,
Yeah.
so
So basically, for example, the best example is if you have a kid who's all of a sudden complaining of stomach aches and you're having to come pick them up at school, or it's stopping them from doing weekend activities, you might want to think about what changes have just recently happened. Or, even if did someone new come into the classroom and they're getting bullied, or, does mom and dad think that the kid don't hear them arguing? When did your arguing start? Or you know what I mean? Those type of things. Often it's not something physically wrong. Often it's something emotionally wrong where your body's keeping the score and it's knocking on the door saying, hello,
yeah.
your stress is too high. Decrease your stress and your stomach won't hurt anymore. It's our body telling us what's happening, but sometimes we don't know how to interpret it.
So I want to dig into that the body keeping the score, because there's a lot of people. I mean, at least I've heard folks that will say that they have belly, like really bad stomach aches, or they have just different ailments in their
Digestive
body. They're visiting all
symptoms.
these practicing physicians, because they're not the doctors in my mind, but they're practicing physicians, and they can't find anything.
Mm,
And undoubtedly, that it's due to stress. And I know that there's good stress too, right? There's good stress.
oh, yeah.
There's we talked a little bit last time about even in these traumas have also birthed good things in our lives, because there
Oh,
is good stress.
oh
But
yeah.
we need to clearly define the differences
Okay.
between that which is good stress and they call it eustress, right? Good stress and bad stress that is debilitating, or that is harmful, that is that could cause you to have a shortened life. Can you
Correct.
explain a little bit more about for people to understand the differences between good and indifferent stress?
Right. So obviously for bad stress, if you're to the point where you're getting psychosomatic um, symptoms.
What does psychosomatic mean? Somebody out there does not know what that means. What does that
And
mean?
So psychosomatic were the symptoms that are popping up, like the stomach ache, the headache, the back pain, and medical tests cannot find an explanation for why it's happening, but you know that you've been under some very heavy stress, or you just recently went through a life transition and maybe you didn't realize how stressful it actually was on you. And I want to just go on a tangent and say
Go
that
on
a
it.
lot of
Go on the tangent.
and a lot
I
of
like
times
tangents.
and a lot of times this happens with Black women. So specifically speaking to the Black women, we generationally, so this we're going to tie it all in together, how the
Okay.
generational trauma moves into psychosomatic symptoms, and it creates disease, right? So we as Black women have what I call an AQ, which is adaptability quotient. So you have an IQ, which is intelligent quotient, and then you have your emotional IQ, which is EQ, your
Wait a
emotional
minute. You
quotient.
called it. It was A. What is it? AQ.
AQ,
What is that? What is adaptability?
adaptability
Okay. Go ahead.
quotient.
Tell me more
So
about that.
how well you can adapt to life changes at work, at home, in traffic, wherever, right? So I would say Black women, and this is just off of my experience, I don't have no statistics or whatever, but
Not right now, but that's okay.
right,
We'll get there later.
right,
We'll
right,
get
right.
there later. That's okay.
This is just off of my lived experience and my observation of Black women around me and my clients, right?
Okay.
If you look at the way Black women survive, right? If we take it back to slave times, where we had to have the tribe mentality, where we all take care of each other's kids. It was sometimes the men were separated from the women, and the women were just with the kids. We had to constantly adapt. If the man was sold off, or even our kids were sold off,
Correct.
we still had to stay and adapt, or adapt to taking care of somebody else's kids, right?
Yeah.
Because they were sold off, or whatever else came about that was out of our control. We had to adapt and persevere. Now, you see that come through generations, how the Black woman is usually the matriarch of the family. And she has a story about how she adapted, made it, survived. And it's never a victim story. It's usually like, I did what I had to do. I created what I had to create. You know, for me personally, my story comes from my great grandma, rest her heart. But, you know, she migrated here from Mississippi, and Mississippi was still a very Jim Crow situation. And her parents, were actually in slavery. So when she would tell us her stories of how she got to Phoenix, Arizona, it was a very like no excuses. I did what I had to do, even if I was tired. I persevered. I made it through. Right?
And you know what? I want to intercept for one quick moment there in that because um, with the whole development of the will of woman and my study and research on whales, my daughter and I were having this conversation the other day, just talking about DNA. You can dip into that too if you want to, but just talking about the DNA of us as women and the necessity, because of course there's trauma that we're talking about tonight, and that's important. Yet on the opposite side of that, there's the good and the indifferent. So we're digging into the indifferent, but there's also a lot of good in it.
Oh yeah.
With what you're talking about, because
Oh yeah.
that DNA, the generational, the grandmothers and the great grandmothers are really critical to the upbuilding and to the rearing of the children,
Mhm.
and they need the grandparents.
Mhm.
And a lot of our generation, and I'll say our Gen X, a lot of us have, I don't know where they are, but we've not taken on the role that our grandparents did. And I'm not saying they did everything perfect, or that they were not without misstep. But one thing they did do is that they were present. They might have been raising some hell, but they were present, okay? They were present, and then they were still giving us an opportunity to make some choices to take that which was good, right, to be able to use, and that we could, eat the meat, throw away the bones. Right? But what I wanted to point out about the whales is that the whales are not taught by their mothers. They're taught by their grandmothers. It is their grandmothers that teach them how to how to feed, how to eat, how to take care of the family, and to prepare for the next generation. The men generally go off. They go off and create families, and the women create the pods and they stay together. Usually, generally 2 and 3 and 4 families at a time of women. And so the whole compilation of this is about us women being able to come together, work together. And with what you just mentioned about the past, and I'll step back so you can continue in that, is the necessity for the grandmothers to rise up. Great grandmothers, if you're still living, grandmothers to rise up. And even if you don't have any children anymore, for whatever reason God saw fit to allow, you have a call and a charge on your life to make deposits into the next generation.
Absolutely. And just to go off of that, and then I'll get back to the intergenerational stuff.
Yes.
But if you look at historically, at least in Africa, how people of color have, and I call it moved, where they have this sustainability and the adaptability quotient, it's as a tribe. And there's that parable, where the neighborhood raises the kid, the tribe raises the kid. It takes a tribe to raise a kid. That parable is true, right? And so when we talk about these women who have been taught, or I won't even say have been taught. Well, yeah, let's use that word. Have been taught to persevere through any and everything. No matter what.
You're gonna make it. You got to make it now. You
Right.
Make it.
Right. That plays a toll on the body.
Yeah, at what cost?
So it's one of these things of, once the threat is gone, whether it's economic, whether you're working 2 or 3 jobs, or whether it's a toxic relationship that's really weighing you down, which women and men, toxic relationships can create illness as well. And I'll talk about that in a minute. But whatever the case may be, once your body feels it's safe to come out of fight, flight, or freeze, and you go into the parasympathetic, this is usually when the illness shows up, because your body has been sustaining and running off of this fuel we're not meant to run in stress. We're not meant to be in threat activation all the time. But unfortunately for people of color in this country, well, a whole nother subject. But anyway.
Another day, right?
But my point is that through all of this time, generationally, some of these things have been passed down cellularly, right? And some of these things have been passed down environmentally, right? Grandma doesn't go to that city. Grandma doesn't do this. Grandpa doesn't fly. Grandma doesn't swim. And sometimes when you ask them about these things, it's just a fear, right? And that's a whole nother situation as well. But my point is, once you get out of the threat and your body calms down, it's overworked. So it's like working out too much for generations and generations.
And everything is hurting. Everything is on fire. Some stuff is out of order.
Yeah.
So properly. Yeah.
Right. So we found that when people go to trauma therapy or even acupuncture, if you'd rather do, because there's other means, like I'm not just for therapy, acupuncture, massage, yoga, Pilates, exercise in general, you're relieving those stress toxins out of your body, right? Because you're pumping endorphins instead.
Yeah. And when you say you would need like a culmination, because no one thing is the answer anyway, because your body is fueled by different things, right?
Well, yeah. So like it would be counterproductive, right? To let's say go to yoga and then still eat red meat every single day, right? Like that would be counterproductive, because once again, it all works together. So absolutely.
Okay. So when you said that you're not for therapy, what you're saying ultimately is that culmination of different things. It's whatever is going to help fuel your body and help your body to be revitalized and to be reinvigorated so that you can continue to run and also even learn. Great place to talk about learning new ways to respond, right? New responses to whatever the trauma responses. I mean, trauma or challenges may be.
Well, absolutely. And I say that because I am not a therapist who just says therapy for everybody.
Yeah.
Do I think if you have the right therapist, it will absolutely work for you? Yes. But maybe you're not ready. Or maybe you want to try a bunch of different things. So right now my mom's trying Pilates for the first time. She loves it. My soon-to-be sister-in-law does acupuncture, massage. Um, she's doing something else as well. I can't remember. But anyways, she's doing a bunch of different holistic things. Feels better. She's losing weight and she's less stressed.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So when you're talking about it being in ourselves, so a lot of this we've learned through happenstance or circumstance, or we were just taught, and so we gravitated to it. That as I said at the opening of the show, we've learned how to respond to some things, and all
yeah.
of it hasn't been good, and all of it hasn't served us well. So now it's a matter of, in some cases, uninstalling some of what we've done, and now look at how can we create something new in the midst of. So we're talking about intergenerational trauma, which you were talking about, in relationships, in families. It's how can we start to? I'll let you talk to intergenerational trauma, but then also how can we start to dislodge some of that and create something new with each other? Because
Yeah.
you got to have people that are really ready, right, and that want to, and that not going to try to lord over you from multiple directions.
Mhm.
Like, how can we really begin to change some things?
The real answer is this is super difficult, right?
Okay.
Like,
Okay.
listen,
Right.
because
It's
I'm not
hard.
gonna, I'm not gonna lie, because you're
Thank you.
talking about asking everybody in a family to change, right? There's usually one or two people who realize what's happening in the world and how things are shifting and how some things that we needed in the past, like survival situations, survival responses, we don't necessarily need these right now. We need to evolve and move into newer ways of doing things or different ways of doing things. I won't even say newer, right? Um, but
New
the
and
real
different.
right, but the realistic answer to this is one person.
Yeah.
One person,
One person willing.
one person willing, one person to have patience, and one person who has the adaptability quotient, the emotional intelligence quotient, and the IQ. And I'm not saying an incredibly high IQ, but I'm just saying the IQ so they can speak to everyone in a family in a way where it's not taken as, criticism.
Or it's not damaging, right? Or it's not damaging, ridiculing, or judgment. But the challenge with that is that you can have a couple people in the room that have all the Qs, right? You've got all the Qs, the AQs, the IQs, the EQs. They've got them all, right? Did I get them? I think I got them all.
You got
Right?
it.
So they got all the Qs.
The cues, girl.
But the moment that you hit a trigger for them,
Well, yeah, and so that's why I say families. It's a delicate process. And, kudos to you if you can get your whole family in a therapy session, or you can have the therapist come to you, because it'll move faster, because they're skilled, they're trained, they're reading everybody's body language, words, voices in the room,
that's
right?
good.
But for the person who's like, that's not going to happen. Like my grandpa, who's like 75, is not going to therapy. And matter of fact, I say that my grandpa actually went to therapy,
How did he
and
do?
he started questioning his therapist, girl. Like, and I didn't pick his therapist. I would have maybe picked somebody
Wow.
different who could handle him. Um, But anyways,
Yeah,
so I
pops.
right, we call him Papa. We call him Papa.
Okay.
So
I'm
and he's
laughing.
originally from Mississippi,
Yeah, yeah.
and self-made. So you can't tell him a lot, although he's willing to listen and have the conversation, but it becomes fun for him. So I say that to express that I'm not up here not saying that I don't understand, because I do. Like, we are all a work in process. But where I was going with this is just to be able to have the conversations, not trying to change people's opinions, but just to put it on their dome. You know what I mean? Just to bring it up. Like, for example, you may have a family who's got very traditional standards about men and women and their roles.
Correct.
So maybe this is a conversation. Maybe this is a conversation that comes up over like the Sunday dinner table or the Thanksgiving table, where you just pop up the question just to get it at everybody's forefront. What do you guys think about, gender roles these days? And so you can kind of get a
Let's get
feel
the
of,
party started. Get the party
girl,
started with the question.
why not? Why not? Let's talk about it.
Somebody, let's get this party started.
And
Okay.
and the reason why I say that is because Rome wasn't built in a day. You're not going to sit somebody down in your family who's been living for 50 years or more,
60 or 70.
60 or
70 years.
70, and they still look at you as you, especially in the Black community, because adult children in the Black community often have a hard time growing up in the eyes of their elders or their aunts or uncles. Everybody still sees them as little Ashlea or whatever.
Okay,
They
so
don't.
let's dig into that for just a couple minutes. So why is that? Do we know why it is? I mean, I would think personally, and we'll hear what your thoughts are. I would think that it has something to do with it's just a personal decision. It's a you do as I do, you do as I say, not as I do. Don't worry about what I'm saying, just do what I'm telling you to do. And so to me, I believe that some of that is a decision to not expand or evolve. To me, that's some of that is stubbornness. Some of that is, and I'm not, I don't want to, I don't want to degrade or eliminate some of what their experiences have been, because I know I stand on the shoulders of my ancestors and people even that have been on the earth a lot longer than me. Of course I do, because my old pastor used to say, just because your butt is bigger than your mama's, don't mean you know more than her. And I know that has nothing to do with what we talk about, but y'all get the point, right? Because sometimes our britches can get a little bit bigger than they should, and so therefore it lends itself for a space of disrespect, I think.
Well, okay, absolutely. And you touched on so many great things. So to go textbook, what you're talking about is life transitions. And just to put it plainly, it's like you as yourself, you're a teenager, you're working through this life transition with your current, caretakers, that you're wanting more autonomy. That's a life transition. Then you turn 18, you go do whatever you do. That's another life transition. Whether you live at home or, you go away to college or work, that's still a different life transition. The conversations that you're going to be having with your parents or with your adult children, they change. We're now talking about finances. We're now talking about safety. You know what I mean? So that's a life transition. But the parent is still in the parent role, advising, but still trying to let go, hoping that your adult child is listening and makes the right decision.
Correct.
Now, sometimes,
Yeah,
go
because
ahead.
me personally, what I had to learn, my kids are all now of the age of accountability. My
Yeah.
youngest is 18, soon to be 19. So the way I see it, I mean, it was a very hard pull for me with the older kids. Very
Oh,
difficult.
yeah.
And because I had a lot of other stuff going on in my life, just
Absolutely.
dramatic, and at the
It's
same
not
time
easy.
trying to let them go their own directions, and and I'm in prayer, and I'm falling apart personally myself already, as well as all of that. But what I've learned, and the benefit that I believe that a lot of folks will say the grandparents get that the grandchildren get the better version, or the I don't want to say better version, but I'll say the evolved version.
Evolved. I like
The
that.
evolved version of, because I don't believe in this whole better version. I mean, I was better. I was good. God said whatever He made was good. So it's good then, it's good now, and it's
Amen.
good later.
Preach that. Preach that.
Amen. So I'm just saying. Anywho, so the point I'm making is that I've learned personally to embrace as a mother. When the children are in the house, I'm more of a manager. I used to call myself the mama manager, or mama copter. Helicopter, mama copter. I'm on top of everything. Gotta know everything. Need my hands in everything. The kids called it controlling, but hey, I just called it being protective. Anywho, but I've learned to be now in this space. I'm no longer a manager. They're living their lives. My youngest son. Obviously, I'm still involved in a lot of what he's doing, but not even in his day to day anymore because things are changing for him. I consider myself more of a consultant now. It's like this is just
That's
my
good.
perspective. I'm not a manager. I don't control anything. I can't tell you what to do, but as an advisor, if things are brought to me by way of you or somebody else, that's what advisors do. Advisors get on the phone. Listen, we need to talk, or you ask me something, and now I'm an advisor. So now. And we're praying, we're working our way through this, but I look at it like I'm Joshua. I'm coming all the way in. I'm not coming to play patty cake. Y'all called me. You called me. Or it was brought to me. I'm a bulldog, yes. I'm coming in, and I'm coming all the way in. When whales come in, they're not coming in to play. Let you be a little ox or what is the thing called? The sloth. Sitting on the side of the water. Okay, now the grandmother already taught these whales how to go get the food. She's gonna be sitting right back, and then when it's time to take off, she's gonna go from 0 to 45 in like a matter of seconds, and that sloth is gobbled up, gone, bye bye.
Well, yeah, and I would call you an expert in survival, right? But the little tangent to that is your adult children don't realize that they're talking to an expert of survival. They don't. Well, they don't. And the thing is, they don't know your whole story, and it's because it wasn't appropriate until now, or maybe even later, depending on what the subject matter is, to talk about it, right? But they don't know who they're sitting in front of. Now, they do know your credentials, that mom is the lead whale, and mom is going to get it done. You know what I mean? But they don't realize that they're talking to an expert, which brings me to my point of basically every time we're moving through these life transitions, if we're able to identify that we're doing so, which is the hardest part, right? Like you're just in your emotions when your kid is moving out or whatever the case may be. But if we were able to identify that we were actually in this transition, we could stop and think about how we want this transition to turn out. What's the best case scenario? What is my goal for this transition? And that brings me to the fact that communication is key.
Okay, so
right?
can I ask you a question? Okay, so can we say, what is our goal, or even what is our intention? Because maybe we don't know, right? Maybe we don't know, or I'm just trying to make sure that we're, as parents, a sandwich generation, that we're seeing it openly and not a point of control, but trying to be participatory. Right?
Well, yeah, and that's where it's nice to identify those transitions because you can switch gear. Although your intention is to be that of an advisor, to them you still sound like mom, who's been telling them what to do for years and years and years. And although they're coming to you with advice because they know you're the right place to go, they still don't want to disappoint you. So they still don't want to feel lectured or beat up, even though that may be their own stuff, right? Because maybe they failed or something they're doing didn't work out. And so them having to come to you, they feel like they disappointed you. And so you're giving advice and they take it wrong, right?
That's possible.
Yeah. But I do agree that if the goal and intention is set with the language, then it releases a lot of stress. Manager mom has more responsibility than consulting, expert, and advising mom. you know?
Yeah.
Now, of course, you can be manager mom when your baby is drowning, because whether it's your adult child or your young child, you can
All
flip
for
that
it.
switch. That's innate, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
But the identifying of the transition and where we're trying to go, like, hey, son, hey, daughter, or even the son or daughter can say this to mom and dad, right? Or grandparents. I really want to get to the point where we can start having these conversations where we both are heard. And I know I said that really eloquently, and I know everybody's not going to say it that way. But my point is,
Say it. Right.
but my point is, if I go to my mom and I say, my intention is not to hurt your feelings,
Yeah.
but this situation really hurt my feelings about what you said or the way you talked to me.
Okay.
That comes off a lot different than, Mom, I don't know why you always got to say that way. Like, geez.
Yeah, that's that why and always. You're supposed to stay away from those. But then, would that also be an opportunity maybe for a grandparent? Because
Oh, yeah.
sometimes I've heard and seen where grandparents sometimes are just too overbearing. They're too involved. They are like the parents versus a grandparent. So where
Yeah.
does that delicate balance even come in? Because maybe a grandparent can uh, give some sort of insight or direction, and or even maybe share a story of experience. Where does that
Well,
fall in?
well, yeah. And that's the most important thing. The last part you said, share a story of experience. We're not able to set the table for our intentions. So we don't even want to have a seat at the table to share experiences, you know, because we know that our grandparents have a lot of experiences that would definitely benefit us, even if it's just the knowledge of who they are as a deeper person. You know, there's definitely something about calling one of your grandparents or sitting down with them and just learning about how they got to where they were. A lot of things that you assumed or think you know, you'd probably be very surprised, right? But what you said about that shared story experience, things are so different these days as well. And I know that people of wisdom know that, but it's totally different to sit at a table with your adult child or your adult grandchild and be like, okay, what are the thoughts going through your mind about what I just said? Or what are you experiencing right now? Like, explain it to me. Because all this stuff that's going on right now, I think it's crazy and I just don't understand. But I'm just saying, how do we get to the point where we can create those spaces where we all can sit down at the table with not any negative emotions and build the tribe again, where we're actually learning positive or useful generational stories?
Okay, so this is a great place to ask this question. And I know as a therapist, you've probably dealt with it. And then I want you to just maybe give some suggestions on people on families that maybe aren't going to collectively as a family go to therapy, but maybe there's some things that they can do. Maybe just some things they can start right away, just as a collective, as a family, just to begin the conversation. I heard you earlier say, okay, somebody, let's get the party started up in here, right? Somebody say something. But I mean, also on a serious note, like, okay, what are
Yeah.
some things they can do? But what about those situations where, because I got to put it where the goats can get it. There's been trauma, there's been abuse in the family, so sometimes people don't, not only not respect a particular person at the table, they really don't want to intermingle with the person at the table at all.
Mm-hmm.
Because now I believe, and you can speak to this as a therapist. Me personally, I've come to believe with a lot of what I've read and in my own experiences and just reading a lot on psychoanalytics, psychoanalytical studies, understanding the human behaviors and mind, is that it's their stuff. It's not really even you. It's the way they're processing it. It's the way they're still seeing that scenario even today. So, but I'll let you express the more the medical side or behavioral health side of it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'll definitely tie all this in. So I just want to make sure that I explain. So the life transitional phases, we talked about the one where, you're 18, you're moving out the house, or you're the parent or the grandparent who has an 18-year-old moving out the house.
Right.
Next would be their first real job. how does your communication change, or what do you advise then, or what do you manage then? Then maybe they meet a significant other. How do you advise on that? You know, that's very important for both sides. And you said keep your mouth shut, right? But sometimes things have to be said, and as the adult child, we may not follow what's said, but we still got to keep it back here because that life wisdom has taught you to spot out people. Listen, my mom has a gift. She can spot. Maybe all moms do. I don't know.
I don't know, but I think a lot of us do.
Okay, so moms have a gift. You know, you guys can spot a bad seed, and I want to say a bad seed that needs to make some changes, because we all can change.
And we all got a bad seed of something somewhere.
Right. So, but anyways, so you guys see what I'm saying. Then maybe the adult child.
So was it hard for you to hear from your mom? I mean, because you said she could spot it fast. So did you learn early on she knows what she's talking about, or did you have to bump your head a few times?
So I always heeded my mom's advice, even if I didn't like it. And she may have even thought that I wasn't listening. I was still listening. Doesn't mean that I did what she told me to do. I was listening though, like, you know, because I know she has some gems. And honestly, I'll tell you, the time when I was like, okay, she really knows what she's doing. And it had to be in high school when she literally told me someone I was hanging out with it was not going to turn out well. And it didn't turn out. It did not at all.
It was all
for that person. And after that,
did you ever
huh?
tell her mom?
Oh yeah.
You was right on that one. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. I was just curious. Okay.
No. He, you know, and the situation that erupted with this person, everybody knew. So it was one of those things where, like, she was going to be, or she could have even said, I told you, or I can't remember. But we definitely had a conversation of where it was like, she was spot on, you know. But anyways, my point to what I'm saying is, through each of these transitions, you have to figure out how we're communicating. Are we the advisor? Are we the adult child that's willing to listen? Because with the understanding that this will probably help us some way along the way. You know what I'm saying? Where are we at? Are we newly getting married? Are we newly having a child? You know, the advisor comes in handy for that. Maybe even the mom in the room, you know, while the delivery's happening. So I just think if people can acknowledge, one, that it's okay to put on a different hat. It's okay to be the humble adult child and listen. Just because you're listening doesn't mean you have to do it. And it's not always easy. But as the wiser, the adult parent or grandparent, how you deliver the message, what hat you're putting on, makes a difference as well. Okay.
That's a great place to segue into giving some suggestions on ways to do it. Now, of course, I would be encouraging everyone that's listening under the sound of my voice to, schedule a session if you can with a family therapist for your whole family. I think it would be a great gift for a whole family. Even if the person, even if they were able to connect with the person and just decided to do it like digitally, right? Digitally, but then for the whole family. Obviously, I think it's probably better. You probably know this, for the therapist to be there, because that person can, like you said, read the body languages. They can respond accordingly. They can divert people or redirect folks where they need to. Because these types of situations can go south very fast. So
absolutely. In person is better always, but you do what you can do. The point is that you're getting there. And I also want to point out, with family therapy, it is not just talking. We do a bunch of different interactive exercises, sometimes kind of like a game night. There's a lot of therapy that can be done with just doing like normal family activities. We might do a whole therapy session at the dinner table. So I just want to put that out there. It's not boring, and it's not just talking.
It's not, because I think a lot of people have this visual of only the moments that they've seen people laying on the couch and they're answering the questions of the therapist, and it's all monologue, or it's just them talking, or well, not all monologue, but they're answering all the questions, and that's all it is, and the therapist is just taking the notes. It's way more than that.
Absolutely. And a good example would be, I don't know if you guys remember the Cosby Show, where they turned their house into like an apartment or a market, and Theo had to like pay for his groceries and
Oh
his
right, that was
apartment.
good. That was
Do you
good.
remember that one?
Yeah. I do
That's
remember
a
that.
therapeutic exercise.
With the Cosby situation this week, but yeah.
Well,
But that was
girl,
great. Right. That was great because it was real life. It's like
yeah,
this is real life up in here. When Rudy was like the apartment manager or somebody, she's like, no,
yeah,
pay your rent. No, you can't.
yeah,
You're out of here. So it's the real raw reality, and
yeah.
unfortunately, I don't know if this is true or not, but as it relates to our people, sometimes, especially our children, and the younger generation is just okay. I want to get mine. Let me get mine. Whereas other ethnicities, they have multiple generations and multiple families that come together so that they can advance collectively, and in order to really build and develop legacy.
Absolutely. And so once again, the tribe mentality, it's nice if we can rebuild that.
So how do we? What would be like just a couple practical steps to rebuild the tribe, and like what would that look like, possibly?
So I think for the adult children, making time and space, calling grandparents. For me myself, I got to do this. I try to call at least once a month. you know,
Once a
and,
week. Just
and
have
that
some.
listen, and that may be a goal, and that may be a goal
Once a week.
to get to once a week, right? Look at the momager over there. The momager just came out.
Listen, you know what? Because my grandparents are gone. They've been gone
No,
for years.
and I hear you.
And my
You miss
grandmother
them.
was hell on wheels, honey. Let me tell you. And I learned a lot from her. I spent a lot of time with her. I learned a lot what not to do too. And unfortunately, a lot of what I saw is in my bones.
Yeah.
And a lot of the not so good things. A lot of the good things, yeah, but some of the things that I would rather not be there. Through a lot of work and prayer and all the other stuff, a lot of that has been shifted. However, just to be able to have conversations with a grandparent, I believe there's a lot of value in grandparents, especially those that have real respect for themselves and you. There's a lot of grandparents that don't. Some of them are toxic, and let's just talk about it. I would be remiss if I didn't bring up the toxicity topic, because
Yeah.
that toxicity is very thick, and it imposes and impacts and influences generations to come, our children, and then our children's children and children's children's children. So before you go into some pragmatic steps, let's talk about just for a remnant, or just for a little small moment, remnants of the toxicity, and the long-term effects of that, how to deal with it in the family, because sometimes some of the things. Okay, here's a great example. Let me give you an example. So maybe you have a person that's my generation. Okay, so I grew up in a family, they love to drink. Drink. Love it, like it, love it. Right? And so, just saying, yeah, they're throwing back, baby, throwing back, everybody. And so, but for me personally, I never found great interest in it.
Yeah.
Am I going to sit here and say I never tried? Yes, I did. But early on, I was like, no, this ain't my cup of tea, primarily because, unfortunately, of the things I experienced, the trauma I experienced. You are loving and throwing them back one moment, and in a couple of hours, y'all fighting. You're fighting, pulling out guns and knives, and everybody want to hurt about each other. And that, to me, not a good look. I don't want any parts of that. And so then learned early on, we're not talking if you're drinking. We're not talking if I see anything that looks like something that's going to alter your normal behavior. And so I only bring that up not to talk about me, but to say that there are generations of people that you'll say, okay, maybe that's what I saw growing up. I choose not to be that way, and then my kids want to be all a part of that. Oh, we like that. You the square. You the boy.
That's rough.
You the
That's rough.
bud.
Yeah.
So, and that's a whole other conversation on the things that the enemy does to intrigue us, right?
Right.
But I mean, as far as the generational trauma, the generational responses, and what we do and how we walk through life based on what we've already seen or experienced in our genes and in our family.
Yeah. Listen, the
I know I
generational
said a lot, but you got it.
No, you said that was wonderful. So the generational curses and the generational patterns, the best way to start is to break it with yourself, right? Which you already did. You know, that's the best way. Lived experience, lived action where people see you living a certain way. That's the best example, right? However, alcoholism is a tough one. Why? Because it turns into a mental manifestation physically in the brain.
Can we say
Um,
that? Wait, see, I don't care who's watching right now. You all gonna watch this on the replay. Those of you that may not be watching right now, because I know it's 9 o'clock here on the West Coast and it's midnight already on the East Coast. But you all are gonna watch this on the replay. I need you to say that again because that's a tweet. I'm gonna tweet it out. But go ahead, say that again. I need you to say that again about alcoholism. See, I didn't even know this part, but go ahead.
so it's a mental medical manifestation, which means, and once again, I don't know whether the egg came first or the chicken, right? But scientists, I should say neuroscientists, have research currently, up to date research, where it says that there are chromosomes in our brain that make us more dispositioned to have addictive personalities, right?
Yes.
Now, of course, when you start drinking, your insurance isn't like, okay, go get a brain scan or go do whatever test you need. So if so you can see if you have the adaptive personality, with the hopes that if you do have the adaptive personality, you won't start drinking or using, right? So that's how intergenerationally alcoholism or drugs or whatever your addiction is can spread through the cells. Now, however, you also have the environmental piece mixed in with that, where you've seen your family cope this way, and maybe either you don't want to do positive coping skills, um, or you don't know them. Some people just don't know them. And they start using and drinking at very young ages because that's what their family has done to cope or to have fun, right?
So is it
Um,
because they saw it, even if they didn't see it, it's like innate in them because of what's in the bodies of their parents
oh,
generationally?
yeah.
Wow, that's
So,
deep. Yeah.
as
And this is
marriage
why
and
I
family,
always didn't want them to be a part of it. I'm like,
well,
no,
yeah.
do what you want.
So, as marriage and family therapists, and we talked about this last time, we'll do a genogram. We will map out your family at least 2 or 3 generations ahead of you,
Yeah.
and we'll circle these negative patterns. And one of them could be addictive traits. One of them could be drinking and using when you're stressed or you're upset versus going to do something else, right? And so we'll say to you, hey, did you notice this? Like, did you realize your mom does the same thing? Her mom did the same thing. Your mom's grandpa did the same thing.
Okay.
Is this something you want to change? And maybe for that person, maybe this person will say, I don't even like alcohol, but it's the
Right.
easiest thing and the only thing that I knew. And we got to remember, our brains are pattern seeking organisms. So
Pattern seeking
we,
organisms. I
right,
like that.
we may say, I am not going to be like that. And then the worst happens. We've lost all hope. And that's what we turn to because that's what our brain has seen. Unless, like you, we made a concerted effort to be like, oh no, you know?
No, and I definitely believe that's true because that certainly was my mindset. Um, that I made other dumb decisions with other things, but
Well,
not
yeah.
per se that because I saw the after effect of it, and I
Mhm.
just didn't. I saw where that would take where that would take you, and just decided that wasn't going to be what I wanted. I didn't want to be in an uncompromising position because somebody has had too much to drink and or I could potentially even lose my own life. So,
Yeah.
and that's like a real, had been a real thing, and even things I've seen that I shouldn't have seen even as a young person.
Well,
So
and to
that's
take
why
this
I was
on,
so protective of not
oh, I'm
wanting
sorry.
my kids to even interact with people that when they were young. Because here was always my philosophy. Not that I was sitting under some cloud, not realizing that this is life, right? I knew my philosophy always was you have plenty of time for that. That's still going to be there. Everything that's attached to that will still be there. And I just want you to have a good running start as a young person. If I can
Oh yeah.
clear you of that as much as possible, that's what I'm doing. That's my aim, because I already know the moment that you're really not up under my wing, you have the proclivities to do whatever you want, and I get that. And that's all it ever was for me. Not trying to really control without saying control, but more so protect, preserve, and not want that to be your life's experience. And that's it. But I know a lot of things only teach us through by way of experience.
Well, yeah. And I mean, you did a good job of getting them to an age appropriate place and explaining why this may not be a good idea, you know? And I mean, anything in excess obviously is not a great idea.
Anything
But
in excess, anything, yes.
what I will say about drugs, and then we can get back to what you want me to answer.
I'm a little short on my water today, but yes, because I definitely want to definitely when we wrap up, I definitely want to get to those other tools.
Practical tools.
Yeah,
Yeah.
practical tools.
And this is just my belief from what I've seen, you know, seeing people deal with the disease of alcoholism, drugs, as well as being a clinical director at a rehab. When someone is an addict, it is almost like their body has been taken over.
So it's almost like demonic. Well, not almost. It is.
Well, and that is what I call it. I do truly believe that it is of the enemy, and this was the easy ticket for him to get to a lot of people because it's a shell of a person, and after 30 days of being sober, you're literally talking to a different person. Their eyes are
So
different,
you're talking to a different person, like physically or emotionally, mentally, or the whole gamut.
all of it.
Because their body has been detoxed somewhat.
Yes.
Because it takes years, from what I've read,
Right.
to detox the body.
Right.
Is that what you mean?
That's correct.
Okay.
So all of it, right? Because when I talk about this type of disease, it's a physical manifestation that literally takes over the brain. So if the cells weren't already active, if those chromosomes weren't already active, by you doing it in excess, it's going to flip that trait. They call it flipping the trait, right? That's what neuroscientists call it or whatever. And it takes over. And in the big book, it's called an allergy, right? And they refer to the two different people as Jekyll and Hyde.
Yes. This is a person that's on drugs and the person that's not. Or the
Correct.
person that's addicted or not. Okay.
Correct. So I will say that is a generational curse. That is a dysfunctional generational pattern that needs to be broken because it moves so swiftly and so quickly. So that one, and that's why, Camille, like Betty Ford, they have a whole family program, a whole family rehab where the whole family goes, and then the person who is addicted is like on the other side, right? In another program.
Yeah. It's interesting. I heard something recently about just therapy for the person who is the byproduct or the person that has been on the flip side of the experience of the person that was addicted.
Yeah, the family.
The family, yeah. Family,
And
whomever, or friends, yeah.
And that's why they have support groups for adult children of alcoholics. And then there's Al-Anon for spouses of alcoholics. And there's all of these groups for all of the different substances. But I just say AA and Al-Anon because most people know what that is. But Narcotics Anonymous, there's all of them.
Correct.
But yeah, so when we talk about breaking generational patterns, that's a very serious one.
It's a very serious one and a very requiring one. It's going to take a real commitment from everybody. If that's
Absolutely.
really the desire, because there are some folks that just like to complain. I say when you complain, you remain. But they prefer to stay on that side of complaining um, or just continuing to ruminate with disgust and anger and frustration about it, rather than trying to look for an answer or resolve.
Yeah.
Rather just sit in a space of despair, rather than looking for an opportunity to heal and to grow.
Right. So they're either in a space of despair or they've become an enabler. And both of those are hard places to be.
Okay. Yes, indeed, it is. Yes, indeed, it is. It is. So we as a people have an opportunity now to just take a few steps, just lean in, take a few steps to heal. There's a book called The Courage to Heal. I always hear people quoting it. I said, do y'all even know where it came from? Hurt people. That's where it came from that book, Courage to Heal, which was written, by two therapists.
Yeah.
And it does take that. It takes real courage to heal. And I don't like to put all my focus on hurt people. I like to say heal people.
Ooh, I like that.
You can heal other people.
Is that in your book?
It is.
That sounds like something an author would say. Okay. I like that.
It is. So I like
I'm gonna start quoting you.
Because it doesn't have. We don't have to put all of our focus and attention on that. Just like spiritually, folks all say greater levels, greater devils, greater levels, greater anointing, greater abilities, greater power.
Yeah.
You have everything is
Preach.
how you see it. Everything is how you see it, right? It's
Yeah.
a choice. And
That's
I do thank God for the freedom and the privilege and the ability to be able to choose how I respond, right? And sometimes, I wanted to bring this up tonight, but I think we're probably out of time. Never out of message, but definitely out of time, because I do want you just to give a couple tips.
Yeah.
But I was going to say that, I wanted to ask your opinion on how, that whole drama, I'm calling it drama right now, with Kirk Franklin, and how he went off on his son, his adult son, the 30-something-year-old son, that had all these clap words for him, and then he clap back at him. I just wanted to hear your perspective on that, because there are times when us parents, we have to go to the place and point of no return.
Absolutely. I mean, listen, if anybody's going to take you there, it's going to be someone that's close to you, right? Because you love them, So I just felt for both sides, to be honest. You know what I mean? I think it goes back to the old fable in African American communities about what stays here happens here.
What happens here stays here. Now, I don't believe that. I think I think those are the very things that have killed us and hurt us in ways that are irreversible.
Right. And I'm talking about this circumstance, where with them, I don't believe that putting everything on social media makes it better, right? And if we look at it, where you and I have been talking about the intention of the conversation, right? The intention of the conversation, the goal at the end, blasting it for the world to see. I don't know.
Right, so you already know that. And see, that's my thing. What was your intention here? Your intention was to try to make me look bad. That was your intention. There was no good in what you were looking to do. Forget about the fact that a lot of what I've done, who I am, has blessed and benefited your life, right? You were brought into mine, not me brought into yours. Now, that's not me being negative or me saying, I brought you here, I can take you out. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is that you were brought into my world. I was not brought into yours.
Well, yeah,
we were brought into each other's. I mean, physically. But you get my point, right?
No, I get your point.
Because you're brought to my life, and you're eventually going to leave my life because you're going to go and live your own life.
Do your own thing.
But I'm just saying, I was asking more so because there are some, I know some people that argue and fight with their kids like that regularly. I've never, I've been blessed. I've never had that experience with any of my children. When they were teenagers, you have a little bit of that, snarling with the teenagers. But I did have an experience with my adult son that I had never experienced with any of my kids my whole life, and really definitely blew the hair I got by choice short back way back. But at the same time, I just viewed it as, okay, what am I supposed to learn from here? What am I to learn from this? And at the same time, it also sent a message to him. I think, that was probably not a good idea because she didn't respond like you thought.
Well, yeah. And so once again, if I would have sat down with both of them, this is not where I would have started, right? But if we would have gotten to this situation, I would have asked, okay, Kirk, when you first started yelling, what was your intention? For him to hear you? Because somehow this conversation started. It didn't start there.
Correct, because we came in the. I like to say we came in the middle of the movie.
Exactly.
We were not at the start of the movie.
Which once again doesn't make it fair. And I just want to put that out there because we all came in the middle of the movie.
Exactly.
We don't know the beginning. We don't know what they've been through.
We don't know, right? We don't
Exactly.
we don't know the pathology, true pathology for both of them.
Right.
Not all
And obviously the son was hurt, and so he wanted the world to see why he was hurt. And we understood that. You know what I mean? But at the same time, just in my opinion, I think it hurt a community
Correct.
more so because we as Christians are human. We get upset. We say crazy stuff just like the rest of us. The difference is that we believe that Jesus Christ died on the cross so we can repent. You know what I mean? And so I think putting that out there, for me, honestly, I was like, great, let's get to the real. People fight. People fight.
Yes. Let's
I
get
don't
to the
believe.
meat and potatoes. Everybody's not eating crumpets and drinking tea every time they come together. No.
And so these personas, I mean, biblically, Jesus got upset. And I'm not saying that he went around yelling at people, but I'm just
And he left
saying,
his family. He left his family.
right. But we know in the Bible when Jesus got about it, when he was irritated with his disciples, when he was tired, so I'm just saying, like, I think it hurt a community more that we're sitting here watching a black man and his black son go at it, and then his black son giving the commentary. Nobody wants to be put on blast at their worst moment, and they neither of them look great, you know. But at the same time, I do think we need to stop walking on eggshells about, how we deal with our anger and how we communicate and how we communicate with those closest, those who should be closest to us, whether by blood or by actual like depth in our relationship.
Correct.
But that was rough to watch just because I knew the intention behind the post was not going to get what that young man or that man truly wanted.
So with
He's
that
hurt.
being said, yeah, and I agree. I definitely agree. And so just even in the re-examination, um, like I said, as a parent, there, we've all, as every single parent will acknowledge, I haven't handled everything right all the time.
Right.
I did the best that I could in that particular moment, and the prayer and hope is that we will, evolve and become better in every circumstance. At the same time, with that scenario, I agree with you. I think it did hurt us as a people, primarily because it's like, okay, there they go again, just acting crazy with one another. Not that it doesn't happen in all families, but I think more importantly, it's just examining. Okay, yes, I agree with you. They both were hurt. They both were hurt for different reasons, and that did not help the situation. It only made the situation even further intense. I dislike and hate the fact that they took her off, that she's not on the air anymore, but she's doing other things now. Ayanla, if you ever watch any of her shows, those rooms get really intense, and all of it is not just the producers trying to get get the greatest footage. A lot of that is what is really happening in families, and that amongst other things. And like I said, because of what had been just discovered in the book about whales, and just how they get along and go along, having thin skin, just all of that, and just looking at us as women, and how we can really support each other, especially when you look at grandmothers and mothers and their daughters. So before we leave tonight, I just want to ask you, what would be, just say three things? Let's just talk about us women. Let's
Yeah.
So, us. What are three things that we could do?
So start small. I think it's good to have the goal of once a week, but we build behaviors by starting slow, especially with stuff that's challenging, right? Now, if you have a good relationship with your grandparents already, let's go ahead and just turn that notch.
Like you do. Like you do. Yes. Yes.
Well, and the thing about it is, we worked through some things. I had some assumptions. He had some assumptions. And I'll be completely transparent. Oh, did I freeze? Where'd I go? Uh-oh. Are you there? Okay. Uh-oh. Lord Jesus, fix it. Cox, get your stuff together.
Don't mess with my connection here. Don't
But
mess with my connection.
and it took me just writing him a letter and kind of expressing how I felt to break the ice. And then he called me and clarified a lot. And honestly, a lot of my assumptions were wrong. Some of the things that he would say were very old school. And he didn't realize they were old school, and they were hurting people's feelings. And he was like, that was not my intention. And this whole time, I'm assuming it was his intention. Because I'm like, why would you say or do that? But for him, he's like, no, I love you. So I would say first, women, one step. If you can't pick up the phone, can you write a letter? I wouldn't do it through text because there's things that just get skewed or misread. But most of the time when we write a letter, it's heartfelt. If you don't want to write a letter, spend time calling. Just try to call them. Even if it's for 5 minutes, just checking in. Because even just checking in goes a long way. Start there. If you are the person, like you and your family, who has decided to do differently, then find a creative way to bring it up. And even if, and you don't have to blatantly bring it up, because look, people get very defensive about their drinks. Like, I'm not saying pop into Thanksgiving and be like, none of y'all should be drinking. No. What I'm saying is, maybe you bring up at the dinner table the new coping skill that you're doing that's been helping you with stress. You know what I mean? Because a lot of times, if we could get people to replace something, even if they don't realize they're replacing it, like sometimes the more you exercise, it's a bit easier not to have that last drink or to have that last pizza pie, because you don't need it. The endorphins that are going to your brain have already created the space for you to relax, whereas you don't need to take that last piece of pie, or you don't need to take that last drink to relax. Because we're talking about brain chemistry, and sugar gives you the same high as it does drugs. I don't know if people knew that, but it's
I knew that.
so, and so does liquor. And so does a lot of other the addictive properties that are out there, gambling, whatever, so on and so forth. So honestly, what I do is
maybe you could confirm. I read somewhere that the sugar has more intensity than some other drugs. It's right up there, like with heroin.
Addictive property. Oh, the addictive property.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's because it gets stored in your fat cells.
Well, that explains it. Okay.
But yeah, chemistry of the body is crazy, right? But so I would start with that, because sometimes I'll just start talking about something new I'm doing, and the women in my family will peep up and be like, what are you doing? Oh, you like it? when do you go? And the chances of them going with me or doing it the first, let's be realistic, 5 times I talk about it is low. But when I keep talking about it or they see the change in me, it gives them the opportunity. At least we're putting it on the forefront that there's something new, something different that you could try, right?
Okay.
And so for the women in the family, that's worked for me. And the other way around. Like, I'm not the only one bringing up new things. My mom, my aunt, my mom's bringing up Pilates right now. I'm really interested. Haven't done it yet, but I'm like, I'm going to try this. You know, Parents with younger kids, teens, preteens, younger kids, make sure you're starting a routine at least once a month, or I would say once a week, but we'll start small.
Start
Once a
small.
month,
Mm-hmm.
eat at the dinner table together or have a meal together. That's old school, right? But if you ask anybody whose family used to do that, that's a memory that they looked forward to. Even though as a young child, you don't understand what it's doing, but you're all sitting across from each other or diagonal, no phones, no electronics, all that goes away, and you're just spending the time together. This is going to change how you guys interact and how you guys communicate for the rest of your relationship, because you're intentionally setting a place and time where everybody can come as they are, share a meal together, and talk about what's going on in their life. You know?
I tell you, I love that. I love those suggestions. Those are great suggestions, things for us to get started on right away. I think the biggest piece of all of it is probably just coming to the table with some grace, a lot of grace, and losing the spirit and space of judgment. I think that's going to really serve us well.
Mhm.
And the hope and prayers that it will help us exponentially just as a family and as a community, as a family, as a community, and as a
Yeah.
people for sure. So again, I want you to tell everybody where they can find you. Grace Under Fire. I'm gonna I'll make sure I put a link in all the broadcasts. We're simulcasting tonight on YouTube and on Facebook on 2 pages. So I'll make sure that I be sure to include that link. So I will leave you with the final thought. Is there one thing that you would like the audience to take away from this discussion around the generational divide with with breaking generational patterns?
Yes. So, specifically for Black women, when it comes to how we hold stress that turns into disease, start paying attention to your body. After a long week of work, does it feel tight? Are you stressed out? And what do you need to do to get rid of that so it doesn't manifest into disease? Because Black women, we are always on the move. We always got a goal or a deadline, but we don't always take time to rest, mentally and physically, you know? Secondly, for the generations, the grandparents, to the adult children, to the parents, to the younger children, spend the time. Even if it's just 5 minutes, a 5-minute phone call, start there. Because once again, you never know what you're going to learn from the smallest to the tallest, right? Little kids teach us how to be in the present. And the older generation tells us how to prepare for the future and live better than they did. So if you have the opportunity to just sit down and talk to any of your family members, I would say younger, smaller to older, do so.
Definitely, because we can learn from each other. We can learn from everybody. We
Right.
can learn from anybody, even if it's what
And
not to do. But
and that's the tribe mentality.
yeah,
Because once you start communicating, it's easier to help. It's easier to support because you actually know who and why you're supporting, right?
correct.
Okay.
That's so good. That's so good. Well, this has been great. It's been phenomenal to have you back, and
Yeah.
we will definitely do it again.
Yeah.
But I do thank you for taking the time out of your day, and we gave some really good stuff. We did a whole 90 minutes tonight. I was not planning on that. but I got to tell you, it was definitely worth it. And I do salute you in everything that you're doing and the impact that you're making, the influence that you are spreading across this valley and abroad. So please tell everybody where they can find you.
Yes, yes, yes. So,
Social
honest,
media and your website.
yes, social media. So we do have an Instagram page. It's FG underscore under fire.
Okay.
Find us there. The Facebook page is easier, just my name, Ashlea Taylor. So find me there. And then we also have a website. It's long. So literally just type in my name, Ashlea Taylor, spelled with an A at the end instead of a Y. But it's www.favorgraceunderfire.com. There's 7 therapists. We do individual, family, couples, groups, speaking engagements. We do a lot of stuff. Just come visit us. Yeah.
Speaking of which, you did do a something for the NAACP recently, right? Like
Yeah.
for Juneteenth.
Juneteenth
Yeah.
event.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Was it
that
good?
was wonderful. Miss
So,
Gisette, I can't remember her last name, but she is the one responsible for all the black paintings and murals downtown. She was a,
oh
that's her,
wow.
and she's
And
also a part.
that's an
Yes,
African
check
black
those
woman
out.
that did all that. Whoa.
It's a black woman.
That's good. Okay, I
And
didn't
we
know
can
that.
talk about that next time too, because that
Yes,
has a good
I did.
story.
My daughter and I did a photo shoot down there.
Yes.
That's good stuff. Okay, yeah, we can definitely talk about that next
So
time.
that was not easy for her,
Yeah.
but
Wow,
she
that's huge.
persevered.
Yeah, that's huge. That work is astonishing. My God,
People,
it's
yeah,
fantastic.
people did not want that to happen. But she's a part of the West Valley NAACP. They put on an amazing Juneteenth event, and they asked me the major question: why is mental health important in the Black community?
And you
And
said,
so we could talk about that next time too. But in short, I explained that when you're constantly in trauma, one, you never get to grieve what you've lost because you constantly have to keep going, which is what Black people have had to do. And two, because you're constantly in trauma, you don't see what's coming next. For example, we are still on Black Lives Matter from last year. We're not even realizing some of the propositions that are being passed here in the state of Arizona. For example, they're trying to pass a bill that says if people are standing in the middle of the street more than 7, it's going to be a felony. And they're trying to stop people from protesting. And then we all know about the voter suppression situation. So once again, while we're still grieving, while we're trying to heal, here comes something else. And if you haven't mentally and emotionally dealt with what already happened, it's hard to be mentally prepared because
or
the enemy
physically,
does. Oh, go ahead.
or physically, mentally or physically,
Correct. Because
because you're
the
missing.
enemy does a lot of mental manipulation, you know? It's like how the captain of the basketball team and football team have to be mentally in the game as well as physically and emotionally in the game. We've got so much on our backs from the past that we didn't ask for, right? But we can't even see what's coming because we're still trying to grapple with our emotions and everything that we've gone through.
Everything that's happened.
So, anyways,
We've not had an opportunity really to. What I'm hearing,
yeah,
is that we've not had an opportunity to recover. We never get an
absolutely.
opportunity to recover.
No,
And I know a lot of. I've had a lot of those days, a lot of those years.
yeah,
And so now it's again it's a choice. It's like no, no.
right,
I'm going to preserve me at
yeah,
all costs, no matter what.
yeah,
I'm going to preserve me. So,
yeah.
well, this has been fantastic. I promise. I hate to. I don't like to see you leave. I love to see you come, and I don't like to see you leave. But this is not a leave. This is just a goodbye for now, or arrivederci for now. We will definitely reconvene and come back together again. But again, it's been my delight. It's been my privilege. It's been my esteemed honor to have you on the platform again tonight and sharing and dropping some mighty gems that are going to really just only build us and allow us to come together as that mighty tribe again, especially as women. All right. So again, I thank you. I salute you. And those of you that are listening, you all be sure to go over to her website. She's got some goodies and stuff there, that certainly some things that will help you on your existential plight, both emotionally and even physically. And I hope that you will share this message on all of your platforms. Get the message out. We need to make sure that especially women are able to hear this message. It's going to help them, help their families, and of course, strengthen and lengthen their legacy. So I am signing off. We thank you again for joining us tonight. And as I always say, those waves that are coming up in your life, they may come up, but you can be rest assured that as they come up and come in, they will go out. So we will see you on the next episode of Well of Woman. Good night.